Welcome, Swagat to this webinar on Women SHGs, Learning by Sharing. Good afternoon. Namaskar, my name is Rajiv Tikku. I am from Outlook Group. We're privileged to have with us Mr. Saroj Mahapatra from Pradhan, Mr. Pradyut Bhattacharjee from Seven Sisters Development Assistance, and last but not the least, Mr. Apurva Oja from Aga Khan Rural Program, India. This webinar is in continuation of our series on how SHGs are helping to accelerate development in Chhattisgarh. Outlook Group is organizing this series of webinars in association with the government of Chhattisgarh. We'll try to keep it bilingual, keeping in view that we have a larger audience base, which will be mixed kind of a thing. In this edition, we are going to talk about sharing of good practices about SHGs from other states to promote knowledge exchange overall in the country. We're aware of the big service rendered by SHGs in this state. Chhattisgarh is amongst the leaders in SHG movement in the country, one of the front runners in this movement actually. In this webinar, we'll try to get an insight from the experts in the field. I'm pleased to introduce our esteemed आदरणीय speaker जो हमारे साथ है अभी, मैं उनको एक बार उनका तारुफ करवाता हूँ. Mr. Saroj Mahapatra is part of the senior leadership of Pradhan. Pradhan is a big organization working in the field for long. Pradhan का पूरा full form है Professional Assistance for Development Action, and its integrator for Chhattisgarh state is Saroj Mahapatra ji. He instigates systems that expand sustainable livelihood opportunities in rural parts to improve people's lives. The focus is on participatory planning processes involving the marginalized households. His forte is organization development, institution building, and grooming and mentoring development professionals. Pradyut Bhattacharjee, we're pleased to have him from the Northeast. He's the executive director of Seven Sisters Development Assistance. In short, we call it SESTA, a premier development organization of Northeast since many years, and Pradyut has been leading it since 2015. He's also an empaneled national resource person for NRLM, supporting state rural livelihood missions all across northeastern states, which is a large mandate. He has extensive experience of working in Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand also. In Jharkhand, he has led social mobilization, sustainable livelihood programs, including leading one of the largest women cooperatives. We're pleased to have Apurva Oja ji with us. He's CEO of Aga Khan Rural Support Program, which is a large organization, and of course it has a global footprint also, the parent organization. He works to organize rural people into self-reliant communities and also empower them, particularly underprivileged people and women, through collectivization as well as promotion of individual micro enterprises. We look forward to hearing from him about micro enterprises particularly. Besides the work with Aga Khan, he is also actively involved in founding and supporting NGOs and NGO networks all over the country, and also influencing government policy. Welcome again, sir. We're very pleased to have with us Pradyut ji, Saroj ji, and Apurva ji, of course. Welcome again. Saroj Mahapatra ji, may I invite you, आमंत्रण आपको देता हूं मैं, आप 2-3 मिनट में ब्रीफ भी अपनी एक्सपीरियंसेस के बारे में बताइए. रिसर्च डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऑफ गुड प्रैक्टिसेस इन छत्तीसगढ़, उसका क्या स्टेट ऑफ अफेयर्स है? वी सी लॉट्स ऑफ कीप ऑन हियरिंग अबाउट गुड एग्जांपल्स, बट रिसर्च डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की तरफ कोई ध्यान जाता क्या, तवज्जो जाती है क्या, जिसकी जरूरत लगती है?
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank Rajiv ji and the entire Outlook group. So आपको बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद कि ये वेबिनार ऑर्गेनाइज करने के लिए. And regarding the SHGs best practices, so Pradhan has been working for the last 25 years, more than 25 years, around SHGs and SHG collectives. So हम लोग आज का डेट में near about 8.5 lakh household का साथ काम कर रहे हैं. तो specific to your question regarding Chhattisgarh, the best practices, I think there are very good best practices are in Chhattisgarh. तो जहाँ पर हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि SHGs क्यों बनाया जाता है, तो एक दो बेसिक मुद्दा है कि एक जैसे महिलाओं का संगठन करना. आई थिंक सोशल मोबिलाइजेशन एंड एफिनिटी बेस्ड ग्रुप इज द कोर ऑफ दिस एसएचजीस. सो म्यूचुअल हेल्प, म्यूचुअल एक दूसरे को हेल्प करना, उनका स्टेटस समझना, एक एफिनिटी बेस्ड ग्रुप बनाना. सो एक होमोजेनियस कम्युनिटी को लेके ग्रुप बनता है. एंड सेकंड पार्ट इज द फाइनेंशियल इंटरमीडिएशन पार्ट, where we are talking about financial inclusion. लोगों का पास एक सेविंग रहेगा, सेविंग एज एन एसेट महिलाओं का नाम में रहेगा, एंड देन इसी पैसा को वो लोग अपना डिफरेंट लाइवलीहुड्स काम में भी यूज कर सकते हैं. एंड थर्ड पार्ट इज द एम्पावरमेंट, where they are going out of the villages. We are promoting women as a farmer, women as an entrepreneur, and then linking these collectives to the banks and other mainstream institutions. So ये 3 pillars का around में SHGs promote हुआ है in Chhattisgarh and around this NRLM. I mean the National Rural Livelihood Mission is all around this actually. और यहाँ पर जैसा हम लोग देखेंगे कि जो प्रीमिसेस है, अगर देखेंगे कि जैसा पुअर जो महिलाएं हैं तो ये लोग का एक विलिंगनेस रहता है ग्रुप में आने के लिए. सो एक फर्स्ट पार्ट ये है. सेकंड पार्ट इज दे आर हैविंग सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ कैपेबिलिटीज, दे आर हैविंग सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ स्किल्स एंड नॉलेज बेस जिसके अराउंड में ग्रुप को बिल्ड किया जा सकता है. और ये पीपल सेंट्रिक होना चाहिए, मतलब लोगों का सेंट्रिक होना चाहिए. सो ग्रास रूट लेवल में लोगों का एक बहुत अच्छा ऑर्गेनाइजेशन होना. और एट द सेम टाइम आई थिंक कमिंग टू द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस, तो छत्तीसगढ़ में ऐसा काफी सारे एग्जांपल्स हैं जहां पर महिलाओं ने ये जो ग्रुप का एक्सपेंशन होना है, एक दूसरे के साथ में इंक्लूजन लेके बात करना है, गरीब परिवार को जोड़ना है एसएचजीस में, ये गांव का लोग काफी अच्छा इनिशिएटिव लेके काम किया है. सो देयर इज ए कम्युनिटी लेड एक्सपेंशन इन छत्तीसगढ़ and in other parts of Jharkhand. I've been in Jharkhand for the last 15 years. I worked in Jharkhand and then I've been in Chhattisgarh. So एक तो है कि एक सोशल मोबिलाइजेशन का काफी बड़ा मायने में काम हुआ है. सेकंड पार्ट जो हुआ है इसमें जो गवर्नमेंट का जो मेन स्ट्रीम प्रोग्राम है लाइक एनआरईजीएस प्रोग्राम, तो यहाँ पर महिलाओं ने क्या किया कि बहुत अच्छा से अपना गांव का प्लानिंग बनाया, रिसोर्स मैनेजमेंट प्लान. ऐसा काफी सारे एग्जांपल्स है और बहुत सारा बड़ा बड़ा प्रोग्राम लॉन्च हुआ है इन छत्तीसगढ़. लाइक we are also a partner in one of the largest program that is called high impact mega watershed program. This was inaugurated by our honorable chief minister छत्तीसगढ़. तो यहाँ पर एसएचजी सब पंचायत के साथ में मिल के प्लानिंग प्रोसेसेस में बहुत अच्छा से इंटरवेन किया और उसके साथ लाइवलीहुड को इंटीग्रेट किया.
मैं ये जानना चाह रहा था, सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट हियर, कि इसकी while as we understand Chhattisgarh has been doing excellent work, people have been doing lots of work, but ये रिसर्च डॉक्यूमेंट कुछ हो रहा है क्या ताकि शेयर किया जाए आगे?
अभी देखिए जो इसमें एक जो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हुआ है, जो बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस का डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, ये एनआरएलएम का साइट से होता है.
हाँ वो तो है
एट द नेशनल लेवल. एंड सेकंड पार्ट इज अभी आप जो पूछ रहे हैं उसके लिए एक स्टेट प्लानिंग कमीशन का तरफ से एक वर्किंग ग्रुप बना है और ये टास्क ग्रुप बना है टू अंडरस्टैंड द व्हाट आर द बेस्ट प्रैक्टिसेस इन एसएचजीस, व्हाट वर्क्स वेल, व्हाट डिडंट वर्क सो वेल, व्हाट कुड बी द चैलेंजेस एंड अपॉर्चुनिटीज. इसके लिए एक अभी वर्किंग ग्रुप बना है जिसमें हम लोग भी उस वर्किंग ग्रुप का पार्ट है. बाहर से बहुत सारा रिसोर्स पर्सन है और मिस्टर शंकर दत्ता इज द हेडिंग दैट वर्किंग ग्रुप अराउंड एसएचजीस. ठीक है सरोज जी, थैंक्स अ लॉट. आई विल कम बैक टू यू ऑन दिस. मैं प्रदीप जी के पास जाऊंगा. प्रदीप जी, आप बताएंगे कि ये जो बाकी देश में जो प्रैक्टिसेस हो रही है, झारखंड में आपका एक्सपीरियंस है, छत्तीसगढ़ में भी है, तो ये कितना रेलेवेंट है बाकी स्टेट्स में? एडेप्टेशन में क्या चैलेंजेस हो सकते हैं, या एक स्टेट जो बड़ा है उसमें एक पार्ट से लेके दूसरे पार्ट में उसको रेप्लिकेट करना या उसको उससे सीखना कितना प्रैक्टिकली पॉसिबल है?
So I think Saroj had already succinctly mentioned about the role of SHGs. So I think what started in South probably by Mairada Dhan Foundation, taken forward by institutions like Pradhan, AKRSP. I think now it is moving on like wildfire across the country, and it has been legitimized after NRLM has come. So now, because there is an universal mobilization policy that every household which is comes under the target should be mobilized under the groups. So I think there is a legitimate effort by the government institutions taking forward the best practices by different NGOs. So एक systematic way of institutionalizing हुआ है. And I think even in Northeast, where I am currently based out of, I had my experience of working in Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh as well. And now for the last 6-7 years, I am now in the Northeast. And from my organization called Chesta, we are actually mobilizing the community's poor women into self-help groups. Now, coming to the geographical differences, yes, in Northeast, there are a lot of issues and challenges being the population is very sparse. There is a lot of transportation, communication issues. The hamlets are very far. For example, in Arunachal, the average population density is only 12 per square kilometer. So what has happened here, we tried to contextualize the whole SHG model. Like generally SHG is 10 to 20 हम लोग बोलते थे as per IBI guidelines also. पर यहाँ पे हमने क्या किया है कि इसको 5 लोग का भी हम लोग ने किया है. So some contextualization has happened. Dusra, even on the NRLM or even NGOs like us, we are not limiting ourselves only mobilizing the women into self-help groups. उसको beyond हम लोग ने क्या किया है कि village organizations या clusters और उसके ऊपर भी higher tiers of association बनाया जा रहा है, like cluster level federations. तो ये जो संस्थाएं है, ये जो women का जो ये institutions है, like federation, VOs, they are actually representative body for the entire village and entire cluster. इसके चलते क्या हो रहा है कि एक aggregation भी हुआ है, तो एक larger mass भी मिला है, and it has actually helped the poor women to actually voice their issues and challenges, and they can now interact with the different institutions like the panchayats. और हमारे आसाम नॉर्थ ईस्ट में हमने देखा है कि ये जो SHGs या village organizations, they are not limited just to address livelihood issues या financial intermediation, but addressing status quo, like patriarchy को challenge कर रहे हैं. हमारे यहाँ पे हमने देखा है कि witch hunting जो अभी भी it's a big issue out here in certain communities. These SHGs are actually trying to address those issues. So I think there is a relevance of this model in the entire country, but of course there has to be some level of tweaking and some contextualizing without compromising on the basic values of collegiality, basic values of supporting each other, empathy. उसको compromise ना किए, हम लोग को एक institution बनाना है, institution on the poor.
Right, Pradeep, thank you a lot. I mean, it's good to know about the localization of good practices, or in terms of also developing models locally also, which is obviously very relevant for a big country like ours. Thank you very much. I'll come to Apurva ji. Apurva ji, can you briefly give us a larger overview of what is the importance of these good practices so far, and how they can help us to really look ahead for next 10 years, 20 years in the SHG movement, as we complete 30 years, which is a long period. But given the challenges in our country, obviously, whatever we do may be good, but we still need to do more always. So what is the importance of sharing of good practice in the SHG movement, and how can it be done?
So I think, from the first SHG started by Aloysius and Mairada, then from NABARD moved to other NGOs took it up. Other NGOs then it now is a part of NRLM, and I think right now NRLM is the major player in terms of promotion. Right. So from what I understand, there are about 75 million women are now organized in US. More, but that's roughly the number we are talking about. And there is, of course, a geographical or a spatial shift. So the ones in south and east, there is a higher density. I would assume, people will not like me for saying it, but I would think that there is a better quality and a greater bank linkage in the southern and the eastern part of the country than in the northern and the western part of the country. That's broad system. The best practices are, I would say, threefold. One is in the mobilization process. That is a very key part. That if you get that wrong, or if you give the wrong incentives for doing that, then you will. It's an edifice with feet of clay. It collapses very fast. And unfortunately, there are lots of examples of this where people have been in a hurry. So frontline workers have been incentivized. You form an SHG, you will get so many targetitis mode. And then these SHGs, then the groups are also told that you will get 5,000 rupees. So they promptly divide it into 500 each, and then and that's it. That's the end of the beginning of the. So there have been these unfortunate. So with the mobilization process, there is a very simple protocol to be followed for this mobilization. When you deviate from this protocol or this process, then you have this problem. But so one is the mobilization, which is one part. The second is what we call what Saroj calls the financial intermediation, but I would say the method of savings generation, financial literacy, and then linking with outsiders like banks. So that is that whole space. And the third space is going beyond consumption credit, which is what poor women initially need, to then what we call income generating aspects, the entrepreneurial space, which is asset acquisition space, and which is also negotiating entitlement space. And I'll just give you an example. So, for example, in Gujarat, we have SHG Federation now. There, the major goal or major objective they've taken up is land rights for women. They are saying that 3% of only 3 to 5% of the women actually own land. That's 8% own. And while they do 70% of the agricultural work, and then this whole issue part in Gujarat, studies show that witch or branding them as witches is a lot related to property issues. It is a lot when the women ask for land rights, then the in-laws family, they brand her as a witch, and then that's a way to silence this whole clamor for assets, clamor for land rights, etc. So, Beena Agarwal has written a very seminal book and a very good, very truthful critique of the SHG movement. And she's saying is that it should not become a means to help or tell women to be satisfied with a couple of thousand or hundreds in your own assets, while the assets worth lakhs like land and agriculture and cattle are in the hands of men. Okay. So therefore, this whole moving the third dimension of the SHG is moving beyond the consumption credit, etc., to enterprise, to asset acquisition, to asserting rights over larger, common assets. That is the third space. And for that, since an SHG is too small, then you have village organizations, you have cluster level federations, you have, I think, state or block level federations. So then you need the power of numbers to negotiate both with markets and with the state. So that is the three parts of the lessons which I have learned so far in the SHG movement. These are the broad lessons. Kudum Shri offers us an outstanding example of where you can take the SHG. Right. There is also three other parts which we need to recognize that SHGs don't exist in isolation. So one is their interface with the panchayats, because we have two empowering movements by the state. One is the constitutional empowerment through Gram Panchayat, block panchayat, district panchayat. So that is one. The other is this relatively new entry of the membership organization. While that is a representative institution, they are members of the poor and at different levels. And if they don't interface very well together, and if you don't design the interface, then they will undercut each other, they will compete with each other, and that will not take the village ahead, village community. Or that will lead to the panchayats marginalizing the women because they see them as a threat. So building that interface, so that is one part. One is the panchayat. The second part to me, which is very, very important, at least in Gujarat and Maharashtra and other things, is that there are large cooperative movements. So, unlike the eastern part of the country, the western part has a rich history of cooperatives. Milk cooperatives, sugar cooperatives, credit cooperatives, a whole set of cooperatives, many of them functioning fairly well. So, initially, when NRLM came, many activists in Gujarat did point out that let us create collaborative spaces between these. Let them not become competing space. But unfortunately, what happens in country is that every department then thinks that that is the only answer to development. This is the new revelation of development. So first it was panchayats, then it became cooperative, now it is SHG. Latest one is FPO. Bhai, baki sab problem hoga, ek FPO bana do, problem solved. So, but these are all complementary institutions which have some things they do very well and some things they do not. They're not designed to do very well. And therefore, village needs all these things together. Therefore, how do you design SHGs to collaborate with milk cooperatives And there's a brilliant example, Gujarat Valsad Dairy, which works with tribals. It not only sets up milk cooperative, it has promoted SHGs because cooperative doesn't give loans. While poor people, how will they buy cattle?
Right.
Because banking system doesn't work very well. They have promoted SHGs, SHG federations, which then helps very poor landless people buy cattle, which then they join into the milk cooperative.
Right.
Okay. So these are, and economically, it's very important that cooperatives help once you have an asset.
Right.
SHG helps to acquire an asset.
Right.
There is a complete cycle. Right? So I think the second is the cooperative. And the third, conceptually, which we should look at it, is actually, to me, the whole market space. And how do you partner effectively and as equal partners with the market players, with suppliers, service providers, vendors? That is a very important place to which I think not enough attention so far has been placed. Right. We have been very content in, and I think Pradhan or at least Naren there was some study done even in Bihar, that they go up to a consumption plus credit level. So ek kirana ki dukan tak pahunchte, and that's where they get stuck. Right. Well, if you look at Amul succeeded because they went all levels up. Right. Right. So we need to learn those lessons of moving upward. So these are, I'll just give you the challenges and this is the opportunities.
Thanks a lot, Puraji, for really scoping up the possibilities of role of SHGs and also focusing on the interface between, which is going to be very critical going forward in terms of complementarities. Thanks a lot for pointing them out. Saroji, कितना मुश्किल है ये इसका जो scoping up जो Pura जी ने कुछ thought provoking points बताए अभी, and कितना ये challenge है इनको आगे बढ़ाना, और छत्तीसगढ़ एक फ्रंट रनर स्टेट है तो वहां पे कितना रिसेप्टिव है एसएचजी मूवमेंट, सरकार और एनजीओज इन डायरेक्शन में सोचने के लिए, या और कोई डायरेक्शन भी हो तो हाउ चैलेंजेस टू टेक इट फॉरवर्ड टू द नेक्स्ट लेवल?
Yeah, the main challenge that I am seeing is basically many a times what the government or other stakeholders are doing कि SHGs अगर बन गया तो total काम उसका द्वारा करना है, whether it is PDS, whether it is MGNRG, or many a times also MGNRG also this work is being done by SHGs nowadays, and the village organizations, and आपको PDS करना है, आपको गांव का प्लानिंग करना है, सब कुछ SHGs ही है, सब कर पाएंगे. तो ऐसा बहुत सारा लोग अभी सोचते हैं. तो आई थिंक द इंस्ट्रूमेंटलिटी जो हिसाब से जो यूज करते हैं, आई थिंक दैट इज वेरी अनफेयर. तो एक इंडिपेंडेंट एंटिटी का हिसाब से जो अपूर्व भी बोल रहे थे, आई थिंक दिस एंटिटी इज वेरी डिफरेंट. और उसको अगर हमने एक दीज आर डायनामिक बॉडी एक्चुअली लाइक द क्लस्टर लेवल फेडरेशंस, एंड डे टू डे बेसिस में दे आर लुकिंग इनटू वेरियस इश्यूज, whether it is the strategic gender need of women or the positioning of women in the society, the linkages of the SHGs with the panchayat, or raising the voice in the Gram Sabhas. I think these are some of the important points where we have seen many SHGs जहाँ पर इस तरीके का काम लोग करते हैं. Even during the COVID-19 scenario, where हम लोग खुद बीमार थे, हम लोग भी गांव में नहीं जा पा रहे थे, but these SHG women, they have taken the leadership. And there are many examples, like in Raigad districts, I have seen the 10,000 women they've organized into SHGs. Their federation is there, and the cluster level federation they have identified the vulnerable households, like the single women, old aged persons, and they've collected food grants from their own without dependent on any government system, and then they gave the rice and pulses to those vulnerable households. So there are many good examples of like this, and at the same time, like there are many SHGs where they're partnering with the panchayat. They've raised their demand in the gram panchayats. They've raised their voices in the gram sabha. और उसका एक resource management plan पूरा गांव का बनाया है, which includes the creation of livelihood assets. At the same time, the utilization of the livelihood assets and income generation activities. So इस तरीके का काम भी उन्होंने sanction करके, जैसा there are panchayats where एक साल में 50 लाख का भी काम हुआ है. These are small पंचायत in छत्तीसगढ़, एक दो गांव का भी ग्राम पंचायत है, तो 50 लाख 60 लाख का काम 3-4 साल तक लगातार काम किया है. And now the quality of lives, if you see in those villages, those have been improved a very significant manner, and there are Lakhpati Mahila Kisans are there, and then their produces are being marketed. They are organized into FPOs, and these FPOs are managed by the SHGs. So there are many good examples. But I think the challenges that you are asking is like how to orchestrate this multi-stakeholder convergence or a multi-stakeholder platform at the grassroots level. So there, I think the NGOs would play a major role, because ये जो गवर्नमेंट है, CVOs है, CVOs में the SHGs and community based organizations जो CLFs village organizations हैं, and then CSOs है, कुछ funding agencies है, कुछ CSR का भी funding है. तो I think this multi stakeholder platforms और convergence अगर grassroots level में होता है, then ये this would be a win-win situation. अदरवाइज एग्रीकल्चर डिपार्टमेंट एक तरफ काम कर रहे हैं, इरिगेशन डिपार्टमेंट दूसरा तरफ काम कर रहे हैं, पंचायत तीसरा तरफ काम कर रहे हैं, तो एंड SHGs चौथा तरफ काम कर रहे हैं, तो ये अलग अलग डायरेक्शन में जा रहा है. So how to make a convergence between all these things, like Apurva ji said, like SHGs, then panchayats, then the farmer producer organizations. I think ultimately this household is the unit and village is the unit of planning. So if we see the overall purpose ki how to transform these villages and how to make a significant changes in the lives of the poor, I think those will be the major challenge. Or if you see the major flagship program like NRLM, like MGNREGS, so all these programs objectives जो है ना, ये लोगों का lives and livelihood को improve करने के लिए है. But so how to converge this program at the grassroots level? I think there lies the role of CSOs. So if government and in state like Chhattisgarh, they've involved many NGOs in the planning process, and there is a formal partnership with the state government. So इस तरीके का भी काफी ज़्यादा examples हैं. जैसे यहाँ पर एक they've launched this mega watershed program where there is a consortium of 13 NGOs and Pradhan is the lead CSO, and then we are implementing this. We are helping the Gram Panchayats to implement this MGNRG program and creation of livelihood assets for the SHG members, and that again to a scale. Like we are implementing this program in 12 districts, and this is a state government's program, and they've involved formally the NGOs in partnership with the donor agencies. So I think such unique programs can facilitate this convergence and orchestrate the convergence at the grassroots level.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Saroji. I think you made quite a few points. I'll just take 2 points forward with Pradyut ji. इसमें से Pradyut ji, there are 2 points which I would like your opinion on. One is in terms of the tendency the government or rest of the country has laying everything at the doorsteps of the frontline workers, SHGs, वो immunization हो, COVID relief हो, जो भी last mile connectivity वाला काम आता है, वो सब उनके जिम्मे डाला जाता है. So how much practically feasible is it and useful also? That's part one. Part two is when you are into development planning at the local level, can we also look at how to integrate the doables out of this into that village planning at the development level, at the basic level where you are involved?
See, I think in a village also there are so many multiple stakeholders.
Right.
So SHG is one of them. Apart from them, there are panchayats, there are also government machinery, and there are paid employees. So SHG can only do so much.
Right.
But otherwise, there are like the schools are there. School management committees are to be formed by the this thing. Health and sanitation subcommittees should be formed. The Gram Sabha is there. The panchayats are the elected bodies. In Assam and some parts of Northeast, there are the village council and development committees in 6 areas. So SHGs can play the role of a facilitator, or they can act as a bridge.
Right.
But if they become the implementers, then there is an issue. Then it's like a dumping, what Saroj and Apurva also saying. So if different stakeholders start performing their own roles, like panchayat people have their the JEs are there, GRS are there, or accredited engineers are there for the engineers. But somehow, since they are not playing their roles as per the SHGs have to actually start implementing, and government or even some of the organizations, NGOs like also find it easier because they should be there. How do we? So what I'm saying is that if somehow we can act as the promoter, can more act as a transformational agent in helping the SHGs identifying the roles of different players and help them to demand as a responsible citizen. So somehow that load will be offloaded from the SHGs. And the government, I think many places, especially like states like Assam, SHGs have now become a conduit of direct benefit transfer also. So SHGs have to be made aware that they are not some routing mechanism. They are not conduits of just transfer money, but it is the government's money. It is their actually their right. So somewhere I think we have to shift there has to be a paradigm shift from seeing SHGs as a implementing agencies
Right.
rather than a conscious group of citizens who can demand and who can raise issues in the Gram Sabha.
The second was in terms of when you do the planning at the village level planning with the SHGs or other stakeholders, is it practically possible to look at their enhanced role at the planning level itself also, and then also go into capacity building and training also? What was
I think
doable?
absolutely.
Not everything, of course.
Saroj had already mentioned, and SHGs, when they are playing a very proactive role, when they are coming forward and taking part in, say, resource management plan, village development plan, or even detailing out about who are the people who are eligible for these entitlements, but who are not getting. I think that identification of the core, the actual deserving beneficiaries of different schemes, that becomes much more participatory and much more authentic, genuine.
Okay.
So definitely they have a very major role, but only thing is that I would say this is a challenge also, that quick fix attitude.
Right.
Even NRLM or even civil societies, we are very much into the transactional role. So it is very much like you take this loan and you do this kind of livelihood activities, but it is not a very long-term investment on their capacities.
Right.
So what happens in many of the SHGs I have seen, even in NRLM or even in NGO promoted SHGs, is that only the leaders, the president, secretary, treasurer, they are the ones who are the decision makers. This doesn't become a very democratic body. So somehow our engagement with SHGs have to be in the transformational aspects and not just the transactional aspects.
Okay, thanks a lot, Pradyut ji, for making those points that we need to focus on the transformational aspect of it, not on the transactional. At this stage, I'll go for the last comments to Apurva ji. Apurva ji, do we have anything to also learn or to share with the neighboring countries like Bangladesh in terms of micro enterprise or related areas where probably you may have some experience there about what's happening in the neighborhood also?
I'm a great admirer of the Bangladesh programs. Two parts. In fact, the three parts which I like. One is that, to be very frank, and this is something we've experimented in Bihar and now in dance, is that the SHGs were meant for self-help, and a lot of the foundational work was on savings. Unfortunately, the savings part has received short shrift in this whole system. What we've done is gone by the lowest common denominator as the savings amount. So what is the least you can save in any of the 12 months of the year, and what is the least any of the 20 members can save, that becomes the base. So everybody is actually saving the least they can, rather than the most they can. Okay. So we've done an experiment which we call community-based saving group, or a SHG plus, where the savings amount is not fixed. So women save different amounts every week. Sometimes they buy 5 shares of 10 each, so 50, sometimes 20. So because rural incomes are not, see, this is a big problem. Urban incomes are, all of our incomes are standard for the year. Rural incomes go up and down. And yet we have this silly idea that the saving is constant. It doesn't make any sense to me. So the income and the savings should go parallelly. And our experiment in Bihar shows that the groups we have promoted with this variable savings, the saving of the same group is 5 times that of a typical SHG. 5 times. So the same women are capable of saving 5 times more than they actually save in the standardized, easy to count, easy to account, easy to lend system which we have created. So we have created a system not to make them financially self-reliant, but created a system which makes it easier for outsiders to give them money.
Right.
So that, I think, is a fundamental problem. Where in Bangladesh, they have a large number of saving groups. Many of them are of the variable saving type. So savings is the big thing there. For us, credit has become the big thing. And to me, that is itself a lesson we need to learn from Bangladesh. And so they focus on savings and financial literacy. Then they come to credit. We focus very little on savings, low on financial literacy, and move fast into credit. So that's part of the. The second thing, and that is something which we really need to, the saving SHG movement across this country needs to shift to this new model. And which is what the model Myriad had started. In fact, Asifa, when I had visited, had the same variable saving model. We've forgotten that model and moved to this very standard, 50 rupiah, 20 rupiah, some, model like that. So I think that is one. The second issue which Bangladesh has done is they have made enterprise for these collectives and individuals of almost an equal plank of the movement. So, for example, BRAC has, when I had visited quite some time ago, they had 136 listed enterprises which women could choose from.
Okay.
And for each they would offer a 5-day or 8-day or a 6-day internship based training module. So आपको poultry करना है, this is it, go here. Yahan 5 days, you will not do classes. Maybe you will do some classes, but rural people like to learn with action. So you will do everything which a poultry rearer does and come back. Or and huge number of it, including shopkeeping. Shopkeeping ko hum to ek, de dete loan. They've done a whole system of how to do good shopkeeping, how to keep personal accounts and work accounts separate, inventory management kaise karna, sab kuch training hai. So they've got this huge amount. So women, once they become savers and they reach a level of now moving away from consumption credit, they immediately graduate and they are sent to these options of 136 enterprises. And they pick and choose. And then they access larger credit. And then they move into a second tier, third tier.
Right.
So I think this part is largely missing.
Right.
I mean, some NGOs do it. Some NGOs have good grip over, let's say, some value chains. Let's say Pradhan would have on poultry. So in that value chain, they can take them. But in a large country and in any country, people want much more options. Everybody doesn't want to be part of that one value chain.
Right.
And none of us have the capability of offering, more than 2-3 value chains.
Right.
So those who fit into that, fine. But those who don't, too bad. We don't have a system to deal with that. Right. Well, they have developed a whole ecosystem to deal with multiple value chains, including individual entrepreneurs and collective.
Okay.
And the third lesson which we need to learn from Bangladesh is their brilliant program on ultra poor, which I think we did do. What is that organization? Trip? Juhi was there and Calcutta based. So they did learn from Bangladesh.
Tricolor. Yeah.
So, but we've not taken it very far. I think it was very high cost and whatever reasons, but it just didn't take up. They have done this brilliant ultra poor program where they graduate very, very poor people who will never be, who don't have savings. So, SHGs actually stop functioning for people who don't have savings.
Right.
Who are destitute, who are beggars. So, उनके लिए क्या? और हमारे हर एक गांव में, हर एक शहर में तो ज़्यादा, there are so many people who are of this category.
Right.
Now we say in our old thinking that though they belong to the welfare charity approach, it doesn't take them very far. Nobody gives charity these days.
Right.
So, but these people have deliberately picked up the very ultra poor and graduated them to the SHG level, where they can see. And I think that's I've seen that program. It's a brilliantly conceptualized and operationalized program. Okay. Where there is asset transfer, so when they not only give a cow, but they will give fodder for the first 4 months of the cow. Okay. Because they will say first 4 months kahan se aayega? Right. And then they take, so it's very well designed program. Okay,
I'll just interrupt you. I'm sorry for that because we have to move quickly. So these are very interesting examples again from Bangladesh. But in Sarojji, if we look at Chhattisgarh also, we see more recently some emphasis on income generation and enterprise also from the government plans, whether it's cow dung to solar, or we're looking at using cow dung in other areas of life also, and whole value chains being created. So what's your quick take on that? If you could briefly give us a quick.
Yeah, I think this government of Chhattisgarh has launched a program called NGGB. That's a flagship approach actually, Narwa Garwa Grua Body. So there the village entrepreneurs and this rural industrial park, also RIPA is also gradually taking shape. So the focus is mostly around this creation of this village entrepreneurs, and then entrepreneurship around this compost, and then marketing, and then how to, I mean, the ecology, and then all those aspects have been integrated there, but it is gradually taking shape. So it will take some time to, I mean, to launch this program in a very large scale. But government's focus is very clear in this frontier.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot, Saroji. We'll come to Pradyutji here. Pradyutji, Apurvaji mentioned a few things about, for example, savings, where the whole focus is going currently. And we see lots of, obviously, though SHGs are doing much better than bigger corporates in terms of saving and repayments of their loans, but we still see lots of defaults there, and we see governments generally stepping in wherever it is needed, of course. But do you see that kind of thing also happening in Northeast states also, where we see that loans are being written off and enterprise focus is not there really?
Yeah, in tribal communities, especially in Northeast, I think the women are generally very entrepreneurial. So people, the women do handloom, they have pig rearing, they have goat rearing, livestock rearing. So now, once the SHGs stabilize, once they have a corpus, and they also can get loans from the banks, I think individually people are taking up entrepreneurship, enterprises. So and there has been also a lot of efforts being given by the NGOs and the government to promote enterprises. But again, I would say that of late there has been also a lot of clamor about forming FPOs, FPCs. So this has to be actually much given, a lot of support, a lot of handholding, and a lot of organization development support from promoters. Yeah, एक FPO बना दिया और enterprise हो जाएगा, it's not so easy because market is its own dynamics. So, or market will not see that this is FPO is of poor women. So I think that's why from a promoters, whether government or whether CSOs, have to give extra additional effort to build these enterprises by the community, by the women, of the women, and for the women, like the governance, then the membership and the operations. So उनको सिखाना पड़ेगा.
I think those are interesting points. I think at this stage I'll like to close this because we're running out of time now. But it has been very informative to get an insight into the extent examples followed by SHGs and how to promote learning by sharing. It's also very helpful to know what more can be done. And the examples from Bangladesh are really enlightening for all of us. And we look forward to taking this discussion forward. I would like to thank all of you for joining us and taking this discussion forward in terms of contributing to the movement whichever way we can going forward. Thanks a lot. Sarojji, thanks a lot. Apurvaji, thanks a lot. Pradyutji.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Welcome. Namaste.
Thanks a lot.